What you don't see when you see one of these videos is the like 8 false starts. I always start, get self-loathing, stop it, start, get self-loathing, stop it. Is like, I do like 10 seconds or 5 seconds. Sometimes it's like 2 seconds. And I'll be like, hey, and then I pause and then I stop it and I start over. So you don't see those. Maybe one day I'll do a blooper reel. But anyway, we're on like start 8 here, and I'm just gonna go. We're not gonna do any greeting. It's the end of April, on time, and I only have one toy and one concept today. So we're gonna get to it here. This toy, it was in, I don't know, online somewhere I saw it, and then I had to have it immediately. So the idea here, let's just back up, is that it's a challenge. You have to get them all lined up. So I'm just going to show you. I'm not going to take forever here, but we're going to see if I can do it here. Okay, everyone just focus for a sec. Okay, you see how it's coming together on the bottom. Okay. Oh, come on. Oh, shit. Okay, hold on. Everyone hang out. Okay. Shh. You're distracting me. Okay, hold on. I'm giving myself another 20 seconds, so. Oh. Okay. Okay, look. Okay, we have a foundation of 3 at the bottom. If I can get this 4th one, that's the harder one. Okay. Okay, I'm gonna stop up in a second. 3. Well, this is my last try. Okay. Fuck it. That was really frustrating because I have done it in that amount of time, and I wanted to do it, but it's just unreasonable to do that longer on this video. Anyway, it's called, I think it says True Balance TM. So, okay, onto the concept here. It's called the Media Matrix, and it's another visual that's in this post series, and it's going to help us think about what we're even looking for in media and what we should be judging media on, because people get very worked up. Everyone's very worked up right now about the media, and I think we need to understand like what we should be worked up about at least. So I have this thing, the Media Matrix. So the Media Matrix, what you've got is 2 axes. I think a lot of times 2 axes, a kind of a square, I have a lot of squares, y and x axis. Sure, there's a lot of times 3 or 4 criteria, and sometimes we're actually going to bring a third into this with a different way than a z axis is hideous. No one wants a z axis in their life, but I think so often it's a default thing to just be on 1 axis, and I think just doubling that to 2 is like a huge upgrade in a lot of cases. So accuracy, high versus low, okay? So this is the stuff that you're hearing. Again, we're talking mostly about stuff that's kind of telling audience about reality. So trying to kind of get audience to understand what's going on out in the world. This is like the media up here are obsessed with accuracy. They will fact check and double fact check. They won't include something if they're not sure about it. They'll be very upfront when they don't know, whatever. And down to not caring and caring less and fudging it a little, and then down to actually it's not even an important thing to them whether what they're saying maps onto reality. Objectivity. So this is, do you have a left bias or a right bias, extreme super bias, mini bias, and then totally objective, right in the middle here. So these are different things. I think people kind of think this is fake news or whatever, but they're not quite thinking, well, what are we talking about? What's the problem? Is it both or is it one of them? Okay. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to draw something. All right. A star. This is ideal, right? This is the most useful possible media channel or network or site or whatever. It's completely accurate when it says stuff. It's just really rigorous about it. And if it ever knows it makes a mistake, it quickly corrects it and admits it, whatever. And pretty objective. So it's very even-handed. It's not, pushing for one agenda or another. This would be ideal. hard to find. And so I think what you want to do when you're into when you're using some kind of media brand a lot, you want to think about where they are in here. And I think there's a couple of things. So I was looking for stickers. I looked in my wife's drawer, and sure enough, some 3-dimensional Gudetama stickers. Okay, so we'll hope she doesn't care if I'm going to use these, because I'm going to use some of them. So what I'm going to do here is, there's a lot of things going on here. Gudetama really has a hard time with things. So let's say that this, which one are we going to use here? Okay, so this is just this is Gudetama being depressed. Okay, sorry for that. See, I feel like the fingernails are really not okay. Okay, so this is depressed Gudetama. We're going to use that to show a media network where it actually is. Okay, so just gonna do this here. Everyone's gonna, let's just say they're here. Okay, let's put them here. And hold on, I put them here. Okay. Okay. So here's a news network, whatever. There are news things that are all around here. So I'm not even, I don't mean to be picking on the left. I'm just putting it here for now. This is halfway up here. So it's news that is, and there's a pretty strong left bias. So this is news with an agenda. And such an agenda that they'll kind of fudge the facts a little bit. They will, do how do you lower yourself in accuracy? Sneaky headlines that kind of make it seem worse than it is, makes something seem worse or better than it is. Quotes out of context. Kind of BS studies that weren't really well done, but they support your point, so you cite them as if they're perfect studies. There's a lot of different ways, without getting to full fake news where it's just inventing quotes and making things up and, just totally fabricating. There's a lot of ways to come down on accuracy when you're not being like utter liars, but you're being pretty bad. And this is a pretty strong bias, right? So, and just in general, I wanted to, before I did this, I meant to talk more about like, if you're up here in these areas, this is like being an attorney in a courtroom, a good attorney, right? It's like you are very biased, but you're totally accurate about it. So you're saying completely true things, but you're focusing on the true things that happen to make the side that you don't like look bad and the side that you do like look good. But at least what you're saying is true. And then so as you move down, you can get even sneakier. So this is one that's pretty sneaky, right? Now I'm going to put another sticker on where they actually are. Where they say they are. This is where they present they are. So here we're going to do, I don't know, this should not be such a long decision process. We're going to say that the Gudetama egg shish kebab, okay? This is the egg shish kebab is where they say they are. Now I'm going to bet a whole lot that they say they're here right on top of the star, because basically they all say they're right on top of the star, okay? So this brings in another dimension here that I was talking about. So you've got the distance between what they actually do in practice and then what they claim to do. So this is a station or a website that says just, fair, accurate coverage of this thing. Or even if they don't say it, that's clearly what they're, presenting that they do. And they say unbiased. They say we're just trying to get to the truth, right? They say this, and then they actually do this. To me, I don't criticize them for being here. I criticize them for the distance between these two. The bad thing is the distance between the two. So that's deception. This is the magnitude of deception. That's when you're causing damage. So I would say there's actually two things to think about. When you figure out where they are, and then where they if you figure out where when you kind of estimate where something is, then it's the distance between where they are, and the star, just the star itself, is kind of how useful they are. It's, the farther they get away, the more useless they are, but they're not necessarily destructive or damaging. It's the distance between where they are and where they say they are. So if that happens to be the star, it's the same line. That's the magnitude of damage. So one way to think about it is like the Onion. Okay, the Onion is, maybe they're a little left biased, but and they're totally fake news, right? And so they're like here, but the Onion says they're here. No Onion writer has ever said, we actually don't do satire. We present real truth. This is the news. No one has ever said that. So I don't think they're doing any damage. They're a little bit useless because the distance between where they are and the star is pretty extreme. So that means they're not that useful, and unless you consider, satire actually can be a useful way to kind of, comedy can be a very useful way. But anyway, talking about useful in terms of getting truth. So they're not useful for truth because the distance between them and the star is big, but they are not doing much damage because, if any at all, because the distance between their depressed egg and their egg shish kebab is zero. The egg shish kebab is right on top of the depressed egg. So I have no problem with the Onion. I would say the same thing about the Daily Show. Not the Trevor Noah one. I haven't really watched this one very much. The Jon Stewart Daily Show. Jon Stewart Daily Show is complete left bias and, medium low on accuracy, right? Because but here's my thing. They always admitted they were left biased. Jon Stewart joked about it all the time. And they also joked about taking quotes out of context. They made fun of themselves for taking quotes out of context. They were very open about who they were. Jon Stewart always said, this is not a news show. It's a comedy show. It's a satire show. Again, I have no problem with the Daily Show for that reason. I think that they're not really doing damage nearly as much as so many others that are really not that different than the Daily Show in terms of bias and ability to, willingness to bend the facts, but they're complete liars about that. And they say, and they present to their audience who trusts them, that you're getting truth. You're getting objective, accurate truth. So if the audience trusts them, then that's what they think is reality. And you're injecting distorted reality into your audience, which is extremely bad and dangerous and causes a lot of problems. So yeah, that's what this will be a lot prettier in the post, but just to think about that. So think about the two axes where in the things you like, whether it's, again, it could be a podcast, it could be one person. You like to listen to this one person's podcast and they talk about the news a lot, or there's a lot of great YouTube channels where someone's presenting the news. Of course, there's all the famous TV stations and the big blogs and the big websites and newspapers. And I think whether it's a single person or a brand, try to place them on here. That's the first thing. And then think about two things. If the farther they are from the star, just take that with a grain of salt, that you're not necessarily getting much truth if they're too far away. But then most importantly is if there's a discrepancy between these two things, then the two stickers, then I think you gotta lose a little trust in them. They're not really, you shouldn't trust them so much. They're lying. They're deceiving for what? For clicks? For a political agenda? Or either way, it's bad. And so that's where I think I think the important axis right now is something kind of constructive for society, or is it destructive? Is it causing damage in the big picture in the long run? And I think the distance here. Now, one other thing to think about is in the old days, I don't know, 70s, 80s, maybe 60s, pre-cable. So I guess not 80s really. And I'm not an expert on exactly the progression here, but there weren't cable channels. There was no internet. Most of the newspapers, the big ones, they were at least projecting to a somewhat mainstream audience. So, like CBS, NBC, ABC, for example, were the main places people got their news on TV. They couldn't get too far from here. Sure, people will say that they had some political bias or that one was doing, but if one of them starts being less accurate than the other two, that's awful for them. Or if one of them starts being biased, they alienate half the country, right? And with a station that big, they really couldn't afford to do that. So they were incentivized by the market at that time to kind of get towards the star. The star was like a magnet that kept them at least in that general area. Now, different story. You have cable news and you've got the internet. So you have all these media brands now that don't need the whole country as audience to do well. So they can say, let's alienate half of them and let's just dig real deep into the full partisanship of the other half. Or let's fudge things a little bit and people just won't know. Or people are or now that we have such a biased audience, they're more concerned with having their views confirmed than accuracy anyway. So let's run with it. Let's really confirm, even at the expense of accuracy and objectivity and all of that. And so what I think you've seen is kind of the center of gravity go from in this area kind of moving down and out. So you see a bunch of stuff. Obviously, Fox News is a big example on the right of something that is clearly very biased and probably in the middle of accuracy at best. But then on the left, you've seen a lot of drifting in this direction, and then a lot of the blogs or websites that are on the left are awful too. And almost all of them. I mean, Fox News's slogan is fair and balanced. That is exactly saying our shish kebab is on the star, which I think is a better slogan. They should change it to that. But and so this is part of the problem. This is part of the polarization of society that's been happening. It's not any one actor's fault. It is the environment changed. So now instead of the magnet for all these media being up here, it is kind of the magnets are kind of down here now, and they're being pulled at least somewhat. I mean, some of them still will get criticized. Just like the New York Times can't go too crazy with inaccuracy because still, they really, their reputation rides on at least being decent, even if they're biased. So, some stuff to think about. I think that, so my view on how some people have, like, when I talk about this, they say, so what do you do for news? How do you get the news then? My view is that I'm never, ever going to trust that anyone is on the star. It's too hard. I don't think I could be on the star. It's just too difficult. I could try my best, but you end up, we're humans. And so you end up with some kind of bias. You end up, something is so convenient to your story or something really, so you just fudge it a little, or it's something just, you really don't want to promote this person, even though they did something good there. So you're just going to leave that out of the news broadcast. Whatever it is, it's just too hard. So instead, I would say, rather than look for something here, obviously, if you think things are close to here, that's great. That's a good sign. But what I say is look for things that are up here. Okay, look for accuracy, because that's professionalism, and it means that they're not treating you like an idiot. They're not trying to make society worse for their own benefit as much. So accuracy, someone that shows that they will correct their mistakes, that they seem just really diligent about it, but then balance it. So find something that, and if you think it's probably a little bit right biased, then find something that's a little left biased. If you read the New York Times, great, but read National Review as well alongside it. So if you're really into a cable news network or a podcast, you're into a bunch of stuff that's hard on the left, clearly very anti-Trump, gotta bring some stuff in that is anti-Obama, that was anti-Obama in those days and is very, sympathetic towards Trump. You have to, because then you're a juror and you're in a courtroom and there's two attorneys, which is why we have two attorneys, because it's when there's two attorneys that disagree with each other, it's the clash between them that lets the juror find truth. So you want to act like a juror, and you want to make sure your courtroom has two attorneys, because a courtroom with only one attorney is an awful courtroom, and that juror is just going to get manipulated to agree entirely with that one attorney, which is not how you find truth. So hope you can take that and do something with it, and I'll see you in a month.